Where is Gonzalo Lira? Nobody knows. Nobody's heard from him in 5 days now. And a lot of people are worried. A lot of people want answers. And we may not get those answers. I'm going to read you, I know the 2021 Human Rights Report for Ukraine just came out, but I'm going to read you the one that came out last year for 2020. Now, this, just keep in mind, this takes place before the war. Before this recent special operation by Russia. There was a war going on for the last 8 years. It's been a civil war with Ukrainians fighting Ukrainians, East versus West. But our media doesn't like to talk about that very much. It's kind of inconvenient to the current narrative. So just to start, the Human Rights Report, if you look at the first page, it's not much. Like I'm looking at it here in front of me, and it goes through, Ukraine is a republic with a semi-presidential political system, blah, blah, blah. And it lays out how all the power devolves. But when you get to the bottom of the first page, right at the bottom, the last sentence says, members of the security forces committed some abuses. And then you start the second page, and it begins, significant human rights issues included unlawful or arbitrary killing, torture in cases of cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment of detainees by law enforcement personnel, harsh and life-threatening conditions in prisons, detention centers, arbitrary arrests or detention, serious problems with the independence of the judiciary, abuses in the Russia-led conflict in the Donbass, including physical abuse of civilians, members of the armed groups had detention facilities. So this is Ukrainians abusing people held because of the conflict. Serious restrictions on free expression, the press, and the internet, including violence, threats of violence, or unjustified arrests or prosecutions against journalists, censorship and blocking of websites, refoulement of refugees, serious acts of corruption, lack of investigation and accountability for violence against women, violence or threats of violence motivated by anti-Semitism, crimes involving violence or threats of violence targeting persons with disabilities, members of ethnic minority groups, and lesbian, gay, and bisexual, transgender, or intersex persons, and the existence of the worst forms of child labor. Now, it goes further to talk, and this is like an 80-page document. It talks about how the regime, members of the regime have been selling orphans into the slave trade. It talks about how Ukraine is actually the global center of child pornography production in the world right now. And then it says the government generally failed to take adequate steps to prosecute or punish most officials who committed abuses, resulting in a climate of impunity. Human rights groups and the United Nations noted significant deficiencies in investigations into alleged human rights abuses committed by government security forces. So this is going on. The government knows about it. Like the U.S. government knows about it. This is their report. And they're pretending this stuff just doesn't exist. Who reads this? Now they're going to talk about the 2021 report and be like, oh yeah, it's terrible over there, but Russia, it's all because of Russia. But this was happening before. This was going on in Ukraine. Like the worst forms of child labor. And that's what we're supporting over there. That's what we're arming over there. That's what all your tax dollars are going into right now, supporting that kind of shit. So think about that. Ask your politicians, ask your media, why are we supporting that?